Hey guys, so I'm back. So today I'm going to be talking about my experience meeting Michael Nesmith. So as some of y'all may know, Michael is my favorite monkey. And so when I saw that him and Mickey were doing a tour as the monkeys, I was like, I can't pass up this opportunity. And as some of y'all may know, I am from Texas. And they didn't do any shows in Texas. So I was like, I have to go. So I begged my parents and I was like, I want to go. Please let me go. Please, please, please let me go. And they were like, oh, like, I don't know. After like the 4th day of begging them, I was like, please, like, you don't understand how much this means to me. And they finally said yes. So obviously I went and I got soundcheck tickets. And soundcheck was wonderful. After soundcheck, Christian and Coco came off of the stage and onto this little ramp thing. And if you were at the Cleveland show, you know what I'm talking about. And they were talking to everyone, and I had met some first generation fans, and we had been talking, and they were like, oh, you're so polite, where are you from? And I said I was from Houston. And they're like, what? Like, your parents are here, right? I said, no, I drove all by myself. And they're like, you drove from Houston. So everything was kind of like, oh, wow, that's a shocker. And so one of the first gen fans, like, yelled at Michael. She was like, she came from Houston. And he turned and he looks at me and he goes, aw, you're embarrassing me. And he waved at me and he blew me a kiss. And I kind of died because I was like, oh, Michael Nesmith, like, noticed my existence. He actually saw me and I kind of died. And then when I was talking to Coco and Christian, she brought it up again, and Coco was like, you drove all that way by yourself? And I was like, yes, ma'am. And she was like, why did you drive for 19 hours just to come here and see them? And I said that Michael's my favorite monkey and I had to see him. And like, obviously she doesn't care if I say Michael's my favorite monkey. Like, she's not gonna be offended that I didn't say her brother. And so she was so polite and everything. And then after that, we all kind of we were pushed out of the venue because like, they had to keep setting up and like keep rehearsing and things like that. And then the show was amazing. I'll make another video about it because it was really wonderful and really great. Because honestly, I thought it was better than Mickey and Peter. So, and that's not just because Michael's my favorite monkey. I'd exchanged information with a girl who is in her late 20s, I think. And then after the show, I ran around to where the buses were to see if I could get like one last glimpse at Mickey and Michael before they left. Because as you do. And so this girl, she called me and she was like, hey, Coco Dolan's is looking for you. And I was like, Coco's looking for me? Like, yeah, right, like, why is Coco looking for me? I mean, I didn't say it like that, but I was like thinking that, and I was like, what? Really? And she was like, yeah, like, Coco is looking for you and you need to get back in here and come see her and come talk to her. And I was like, oh crap, like, okay. Well, I sprinted back in and I was like breathing really heavily because I had just run, and Coco is like, Alexandra, come here. And she goes down to the little ramp. She's like, she grabs my hand. She holds my hand this whole time. Like, she's so freaking sweet. Like, if you meet Coco, she's a blessing. And she grabs my hand and she's like, I thought you might want to come back here and relax for a few minutes and just take your time back here. And like, I was still breathing heavy from running, and she's like, no, just breathe, like, it's okay. And I didn't, at the time, like, my brain wasn't processing that she was taking me to meet Michael. And she just told me about how her and Mickey used to go to Texas to visit the grandma, and just talking about things like that. And she just kept telling me, like, it's okay, like, just breathe, everything's fine. And then we went to the dressing rooms, and she started looking around, and I was like, okay, like, this is kind of cool, like, wow. And she's like, isn't this nice? Like, this is what life is like on the road. So glamorous, and being just so sarcastic and funny. And then she knocks on one of the doors, and she's like, hey, has anyone seen Nez? And that's like when it clicked in my brain that I was going to meet Michael, or at least see him closer than the stage and the audience. And that's when I kind of like started freaking out and like hyperventilating more. And she's like, it's okay. And they're like, oh no, like he's not in here. And so we keep walking around the dressing rooms and we can't find him. And so we go out and we start walking to his tour bus. And Coco asks the security guard who stops us, like, if he had seen Nez. And he was like, no, like, he's in the dressing rooms. And she was like, no, he's not. We were just there. And he's like, okay, well, if y'all go sit at those picnic tables, I will go find Michael. And so we went over to the picnic tables, and we were sitting there. Well, actually, before we were sitting there, we were just talking, and I kept saying, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. And she's like, she kind of pulled me closer, and our faces were like this far apart. And she's like, don't say yes, ma'am. My name's Coco. Call me Coco. Say yes, Coco. And I was like, holy cow, like, Coco Jolens just asked me to call her Coco. She's like, you're very polite, and I get you saying yes, ma'am, because my mom used to do that because she was also from Texas. And I was just kind of like, ah. And she's like, say yes, Coco. And I was like, yes, Coco. Just kind of like timidly. And she's like, good. And we sat down, and she made a comment on my tights, which I'm wearing currently. And she was like, oh, I had a pair of tights exactly like that, except mine were lime green back in the 60s. And she's like, the 60s, they were a colorful time. I was like, I was thinking, yep, because drugs. Drugs. And clearly very, very colorful. And so we were just talking, and the security guard like waves us over, and he's like, come on. And Coco goes, are you taking us to see Nez? And he goes, no, I'm taking y'all to see a world market, like. And she's like, gosh, like, chill. And I started like breathing, and my heart was beating, and I was like, holy crap, like, I'm about to see Michael. Like, Michael's gonna be right there. And she's like, okay, now I need you to take a deep breath for me, and it's gonna be okay. And I was like, okay. And I was walking into his tour bus, and I didn't even get all the way up the stairs before I saw him, and I just kind of froze, because I was like, I'm making eye contact with Michael Nesmith. Like, he is right there. This man that I have loved for 7 years is sitting less than 5 feet away from me. And I almost started crying because I was just so in awe of him sitting there and just drinking a beer and being all chill. And so I literally like couldn't move, and he had to be like, come on over. And I was like, holy crap, he just talked to me, like, wow. And so I walked over, and he's like, what's your name? And I was like, oh, it's Alexandra. And he was like, hi, Alexandra, it's nice to meet you. I was like, it's nice to meet you too. And I was so quiet, and I was hyperventilating and just like so just out of it and everything, because I was like in such awe. And he was like, it's okay, you can breathe, it's gonna be fine. And I was like, holy crap, okay, like I can breathe, it's gonna be fine. And then he was like, so since you're about 12, when did you get into the monkeys? And I laughed and I was like, I actually was 12. And then Coco was like, Michael, she's 19. And he goes, oh, okay. And she's like, she's going to college next year. And he was like, where are you going? And I said, University of Arkansas. He's like, what are you gonna do? And I said, oh, I'm double majoring in theater and photography and then minoring in history. And he was like, his face kind of lit up, like he was happy that I was doing something artistic, I guess, and not just settling for something that I didn't want to do. And he could tell that I was passionate about it, I guess. And he was like, wow, like that's really cool. And then like our time was kind of like ending, and like we were about to leave, and I was like, oh, can I get a hug? And then Christian was like, oh, I thought you were gonna ask for a picture. And I was like, I'd really like one of those too, like if that's okay. And they were like, yeah, of course. And then Michael was like scooting over and he was like, come sit here next to me, darling. He freaking called me darling. He called me darling, and my brain was like, Michael Nesmith just called me darling. And inside, my body was screaming out of excitement. But I was like trying to stay calm and be like, not be a weird person. And so I sat next to him after we hugged, and I was just like, holy crap, like I'm sitting next to Michael. And I handed Christian my phone to take the pictures, and he made a comment about how my screen was dark, and he's like, ah, she's trying to save battery, she's smart. I was like, thanks, like, cool. And when he was about to take the picture, Michael said, all right, now cheek to cheek, so that like our faces would be next to each other. And I was like, holy crap. And like he wrapped his arm around my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around his shoulder, and I was like, holy cow, like my arm is around Michael Nesmith. Like whoever would have thought that I would meet Michael, because I never did. I've been wanting this to happen for 7 years, and I was like, it's never gonna happen. Like, wow, like I'm never gonna meet him, you know? And so we were just doing that, and Christian was like, all right, now do a silly one. And like I was so smiley and so happy from just sitting there next to him and even like being in his presence that I couldn't. I was just kind of like, oh my god. And Michael did like his stereotypical face, like with his tongue sticking out and like that face. It was so perfect and so surreal, and it really doesn't feel like it happened. And I was like, oh, thank you, Mr. Nesmith. And I called him freaking Mr. Nesmith. Who calls him Mr. Nesmith? No one. And so I was like, oh, thank you for everything, Mr. Nesmith, like for your music and everything. And he was like, yeah, of course. And so Coco like grabbed my hand again, and we walked out, and she goes, now add me on Facebook, okay? My name's Coco. I was like, okay, I'll do that. Like, awesome. Okay. And I was just like so in awe, and it was so wonderful, and I am so content with my life right now. And I just never would have thought that that would happen, because I've been wanting that to happen for 7 years. Seven. And it hadn't. And I was just kind of like, wow. Like, I just met Michael Nesmith, and I started crying and like hyperventilating and everything after I left Coco and got back to my friend who called me, and like we were talking about it and everything, and it was just so surreal just being in his presence. Like, he was genuinely such a kind man who was willing to even like meet me, because Coco was the one who was like, hey, there's this girl from Texas and you're her favorite, would you be willing to meet her? And he was like, yeah, of course, like I'd love to do that. Like, the fact that he was even willing to do that just makes me so happy, and I can't believe it happened, and it was so wonderful. So yeah, alright, so I will see y'all next time, whenever that is, and I'm glad to have been here. Bye.